Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Draft Room. This is the NFL Draft Podcast of the Packernet Podcast Network. Appreciate y'all stopping in. If you'd like to call into the show, by the way, please feel free to do so. The phone number here is 608-561-3243. Send in your mock drafts, your hot takes, whatever it is you got, and we can talk about it. We don't have any today, which is fine because we have plans today, ladies and gentlemen. As I thought I was doing yesterday, but I can't keep track of what I'm doing. Today is Mock Draft Monday on the Draft Show. And so what we're going to do today is a second round mock draft. I'm going to do a quick recap of who picked what in the first round. And then we're going to rip through our second round here. The idea being, number one, not overdoing the first round mock drafts. Number two, expanding into some slightly lesser known prospects. And then number three, giving teams that don't have first round picks an opportunity to make some picks. So first of all, let's recap our first round from last week. It would have been, I believe. So with the first pick, we've got the Raiders taking Mendoza, the quarterback, the Jets taking the next Micah Parsons in Arvell Reese, Arizona Cardinals taking Maui Goa, the offensive tackle, Titans take edge rusher Reuben Bain, Giants take wide receiver Cornell Tate, the Browns take offensive tackle Spencer Fano, the Commanders take edge rusher David Bailey, the Saints take running back Jeremiah Love, Chiefs Caleb Downs, the safety, Bengals defensive tackle Peter Woods, Dolphins Mansour Delane, the corner, Cowboys take Sonny Styles, the linebacker out of Ohio State, Jermod McCoy, the corner, goes to the Rams, Jordan Tyson, wide receiver, to the Ravens, Kendrick Falk, edge, to the Bucks, Ty Simpson, the quarterback, goes to the Jets, Caden Proctor, tackle, to the Lions, Avion Terrell, cornerback for the Minnesota Vikings, Kenyon Sadiq, the tight end, going to the Carolina Panthers, Brandon Cisse, I think it is, going cornerback to the Dallas Cowboys, Mekhi Lemon to the Pittsburgh Steelers, pretty popular pick, Ione, I think is his name, Vega Ione, who right now is much higher on the consensus board. We just talked about him. I guess that's not true. I think it was 18 or something. Anyways, got him going to the Chargers. Denzel Boston, wide receiver, to the Eagles. Kevin Concepcion, wide receiver, to the Browns. Caden McDonald, defensive tackle, to the Bears. CJ Allen, linebacker, to the Bills. Cassius Howell, edge rusher, to the 49ers. Caleb Lomu, offensive tackle, to the Texans. Monroe Freeling, offensive tackle, to the Rams. Anthony Hill Jr., linebacker, to the Broncos. Akeem Mesidor, edge rusher, to the Patriots. And Colton Hood, cornerback, to the Seattle Seahawks. So some of these might be kind of crazy sounding because obviously things change over time. This is, do I have a date stamp on here? I don't know if I have that. Could add that to the site. Anywho, presumably this was like a week ago. So we're going to pick up where we left off and get into the second round. I'll obviously briefly mention the picks that they made as we go. Alrighty, so let's go ahead and dive in. So the Jets get the top pick. They've already made two selections. They went and got Arvell Reese, and then they got Ty Simpson. I think the biggest question here is, are we serious about Ty Simpson, in which case he's our guy, we got to build around him, or are we just kind of plugging him in and then we'll go get an edge rusher or something because we can grab TJ Parker? Because we need edge help. Heck, we could use corner help, we could use safety help, could use a lot of stuff. I think if you're going to draft a quarterback in the first round, if you're going to bother, you have to invest in that quarterback. And right now, we got Wilson, who's a good, not great receiver. It looked like he was going to be an elite receiver, but hasn't really replicated his rookie season since his rookie season. Outside of that, terrible wide receiver room, no real tight end threat, and the interior is a disaster. And that's assuming we re-sign Elijah Vera Tucker at right guard. Then it's a disaster. If they don't, it's a crisis. So with that, our top prospects, by the way, TJ Parker, edge rusher, Caleb Banks, Emmanuel Prenyon, few others, on and on and on. I'm going to go ahead and select Mr. Emmanuel Prenyon, the interior offensive lineman. John Simpson is currently our left guard. He's 28 years old. He's not good at football. As of right now, Prenyon will slot there as your left guard. Elijah Vera Tucker, again, I'm assuming we are going to re-sign him, in which case we'll have 2 decent guards, and we just got to figure out what the heck to do with center and Josh Myers, but it's a step in the right direction. Then with the second pick in the second round, pick 34, we got the Arizona Cardinals. Arizona Cardinals selected Maui Goa at pick 3 in the first round. I think the reality here, and it shouldn't come as any surprise, is they need a lot of help in a lot of places. Quarterback is always something to keep in mind. Do you take a swing on a guy like Trinidad Chambliss? And I think there are a lot of guys, and we kind of talked about this, and I'm kind of in a weird spot where I really like the quarterback class. I was going through and doing some grading, and I'm like, I'm giving too high a grades for some of these guys, I think. Do you take a swing on Trinidad or Garrett Nussmeier or possibly some of the other guys, which might seem crazy, but, I mean, again, Cade Klubnik was seen as a lock early guy, and then his team fell apart, and suddenly he's supposed to be terrible. Same with Drew Aller and, Carson Beck. These are guys in Nussmeier. I mean, these are guys that were expected to be elite prospects, and they show that at times. Do you possibly take a swing? The reason we're talking about this, obviously, is the speculation around Kyler Murray. If you're not going to do that, we need more offensive line help. We could use another wide receiver. Running back is not out of the question. A nose tackle to replace, 32-year-old Dalvin Tomlinson, who's completely nosedived off a cliff. We need linebacker help. Safety with Budda Baker having just an appallingly bad year at 30 years old. And so I'm pretty torn. I'm very, very tempted to take Jennings Dunker as a second offensive lineman because they need at least 3. It's assuming you're good with Froholt at center, and Paris Johnson obviously is solid. But I think what I'm going to do, because it's a really solid fit for them, is find that replacement for Dalvin Tomlinson in Caleb Banks. The only question about him, he's got some kind of a foot injury. They're going to have to go through all the medical stuff. But because I don't know anything at this point, Banks is a beast. He's 6'6", 330 pounds. We've also got Calais Campbell, who is 900 years old at this point. He's a free agent, so he may also be going out the door. We did add Walter Nolan last year. He looked like he had a good rookie year, but we need that bigger presence. And I don't even know who their defensive tackle is at this point. I should check that out. I'll add that into my notes. Obviously, they've got some changes going on over there, but assuming they stick with a similar thing, and even if they don't, they could use them as a 1-tech and a 4-3 defense. It doesn't really matter. But Caleb Banks, defensive tackle to the Arizona Cardinals. Next up, we have the Tennessee Titans, who took edge rusher Ruben Bain with their first pick. Some of the details that have come out since we did the mock draft is that essentially it is a lock that they take David Bailey and not Ruben Bain. So that'll be something we kind of look at moving forward. But either way, we have them taking an edge rusher with their first pick. This is another team that you're kind of looking at best player available. They need a lot of stuff. TJ Parker, the edge rusher, remains the top guy. We could go back-to-back. I don't know that that's necessary, especially considering we got presumably a premier player. And we've still got some talent on the defensive line. Guys like Jeffrey Simmons, Tavondre Sweat is an absolute beast. So our defensive front is, there's nothing wrong with getting another edge rusher, but man, we need DB help desperately, and we haven't even looked at our offensive line yet. I'm assuming we're not really looking at replacing Ward right now. It's just not a great time. We could have that conversation if there was a quarterback available, but we'll probably stick with Ward or find something in free agency if we really want to go that way. Supporting Ward is not the worst idea. We have almost the exact opposite situation where we have guards on this team. We need tackles and a center. J.C. Latham was a number 7 overall pick, and he has not panned out so far. Maybe in year 3, he kind of takes a bigger step. But with Jennings Dunker probably being more interior, we'd have to reach a little bit more on a guy if we wanted to go offensive line like Blake Miller. Otherwise, tight end, wide receiver is kind of the direction I'd want to go. I'm always a big fan of Mr. Chimere Dike, Waukesha kid. I wanted him to be a Packer so bad. I think he had especially as a returner, he had a really solid year. Super happy for him, but Still, I don't know that this is the greatest group in the world. Calvin Ridley is kind of their top option out there. And he is just not a super fantastic option, especially at 31 years old. Alec Aomanor, however you say his name, also did not have the greatest year ever. And so even though it really doesn't line up very well, it's very defense heavy right now. I am going to go wide receiver. The top receiver available is Zachariah Branch out of Georgia, but I'm not going to go that way. Not that we have anybody on the team that should force me to do anything else, but he's kind of a Chimere Dike kind of a guy. Explosive speed slot guy. We have that guy. I would prefer to find more of a genuine X receiver, maybe kind of replacing Aomanor, if anything. A real dog on the outside that can win the one-on-ones. Not to say that Branch maybe can't do that, but I just don't think that that's how he's being projected. So I'm going to have them select wide receiver Chris Brazzell out of Tennessee. Dude is 6'5", 200 pounds, had a 81 receiving grade this past year, so we're going to hope that he can come in and actually give us a genuine dominant force on the outside. All right, then we got the Las Vegas Raiders. Obviously, they took Fernando Mendoza with their first pick. Immediately, the mind goes to, how can we help him? Because that guy's going to need a lot of help. There is not much to work with outside of Brock Bowers and Ashton Genty, which you could think of as being like, oh, man, he's got a great situation. His offensive line and wide receivers are horrendous. They took Jackson Powers-Johnson in the second round. He's at least average, as is Dylan Parham. They're right at, that 60 range, but I mean, it's like 60, 50, 60, 60 across the board. If we're okay with that, maybe find a replacement for Kappa in a little bit later. Probably should get a better right tackle if at all possible. But, Tyler Lockett's got absolutely nothing left. He's a free agent. I doubt you bring him back. Trey Tucker as a starting receiver in his final year. Give me a freaking break. And then Jack Besh in the second round, you were hoping he could be something, and that was absolutely nothing. There's a lot of other needs on the defense as well, but I'm not even concerned with that. And so, do you take Blake Miller out of Clemson to be your right tackle? I think Zachariah Branch, the wide receiver out of Georgia, would make sense here to replace the Tyler Lockett that's presumably leaving in free agency. Those are kind of the two big ones that I'm looking at, unless we want to, possibly look at some of these interior offensive lineman type of guys like Connor Lew. Again, I don't think I would take a guard, but maybe somebody like Connor Lew if you felt good enough about it, but he's way down on our board right now. So I think I'm going to invest in a right tackle for us to be on the opposite side of Colton Miller, who is a very good left tackle. So we got Colton Miller, and now we're going to have Blake Miller, the Miller brothers, holding down the edges for us. All right, we'll slot in one more here before we take a break. We got the New York Giants, who drafted Carnell Tate, wide receiver, at pick 5. Now picking at, again, pick 5 in the second round, pick 37. My mind is relatively singular here, and I think this is an easy pick for me. Dart is an exciting prospect. Jackson Dart, the quarterback. We have Malik Neighbors. We went out and got him a counterpart now. Wan'Dale Robinson is fine, whatever. The biggest concern I have with Jackson Dart is he going to actually survive long enough to be our starting quarterback for the next 5 years, much less 10 or 15? The guy had how many concussions? Or at least, how many times he got checked? I don't know how many times were verified, but it's getting a little scary. And so I'm going to have us investing in the top offensive lineman here, which is Jennings Dunker. We have a 36-year-old right guard, and we have John Runyon at left guard, who is absolutely terrible. Not to mention John Michael Schmitz, who is another second-round flop at the center position. We could use a right tackle also, as 31-year-old Jermaine Illuminor is over there. But again, Jennings Dunker can come in. He'd take whatever spot he wants. He's probably going to be playing guard for us. If we're keeping our right guard and right tackle, who right now Van Rotten and Illuminor are both free agents. So that frickin' sucks. If we re-sign them, which not that that's going to do much other than maybe stabilize things a touch, he can come in and be the left guard because I think that is the weakest spot with Runyon. Otherwise, I guess you keep Runyon because he's relatively young, and you put him in that right guard spot, and you let Van Rotten walk, and in right guard, I don't know, let Mbo take over. I don't know, but freaking rough situation. Either way, Jennings Dunker doesn't get much easier than that. We need an offensive lineman. We got a good one just sitting right there. Okay, why don't we take a break? We will come back and rip through the rest of these picks. We'll take a break. We'll be right back. All right, that puts the Houston Texans on the clock. They had a trade with the Washington Commanders that put them in this spot. They picked Caleb Lomu, the offensive tackle, at pick 28. And I think that's for obvious reasons. I mean, they drafted a quarterback. He looked really, really good, and things are going downhill, presumably at least in part, because of a breakdown in blocking. We have an incredible team here. We got some really good wide receivers. We've got a stout defense, although we need to be very careful because this defense is also an aging defense. We have to make sure that we're replacing people. Derek Barnett, Denico Autry are free agents. Danielle Hunter is in the final year of his deal, as is Will Anderson. Obviously, they're going to re-sign Will Anderson, but that's going to take a pile of money that maybe they're not going to want to invest in what will be 33-year-old Danielle Hunter next year. In addition, Sheldon Rankins, Tim Settle, Naquan Jones, and Fatu Kasi on the defensive line are free agents, with 3 other guys in the final years of their deal. So this defense, if we're not actively trying to replace some of these people, you got 1 or 2 more years of being, possibly 1 or 2 more years of this thing just falling apart before it falls apart. So we need to be cognizant of that and not just let it deteriorate because we're so focused on fixing this year's problems. I think one of the bigger issues, though, is that I don't know that the drafting has been fantastic. Yes, Will Anderson at pick 3 is good, duh. But some of the misses on the offensive line have forced our hand here a little bit to get in here and do some stuff. We got, Jake Andrews, who's a miss at 3rd round. Titus Howard is a failed 1st-round pick. Ursary is a failed 2nd-round pick. I tell you what, I don't know how popular of a pick it's going to be. I am going to take Kristen Miller, defensive tackle out of Georgia. I'm assuming there'd be a lot of pushback on that, but if I'm the GM here, again, my top 2 guys are Rankins and Settle. They're both free agents. And it's not like these are 22-year-old studs. Sheldon Rankins is 32 years old. Tim Settle is going to be 30. And we got 2 other guys behind him that are free agents. And again, you got guys like Togiai and Mario Edwards, who's 32, in the final years of their deal. That is to say, in 2 years, we don't have a single defensive tackle on this team. So, and Daniil might be in the final year of his contract. So we have to continue building here. And that's what we're going to do. I mean, look, we see teams like Philly do that successfully. Just keep swinging at our strengths. And that's what we're going to do here. Kristen Miller, defensive lineman out of Georgia. Really good run defender. He brings a little bit of both, but he can be that stout interior defender as Hunter and Anderson just freaking tee off on everybody. All right, now we got the Cleveland Browns. They took Spencer Fano at 6 and Kevin Concepcion at 24. Obviously, Shedeur Sanders, it's such a weird thing with the Shedeur Sanders thing. I feel like I'm obligated to play along with this fantasy that he's a legit guy that should get a serious opportunity. He's the 38th ranked quarterback out of 38. He was absolutely appalling as a quarterback. The only reason I'm probably not going to draft a quarterback is based on where we're at, and it's just a freaking mess. Trinidad is an option, but honestly, if I'm taking over this team and I got 1 year, I'm not going to panic and swing at some question mark quarterback in the 2nd round behind a bad offensive line. we're gonna build the right way. We're gonna build through the trenches, and when the time comes, we will find the right quarterback. Right now, we don't have receivers. We don't have an offensive line. We got an offensive lineman and a receiver, but I don't know that we are done. Pop quiz. Give me one good player that is young and under contract for an extended period of time on this offensive line. Their left tackle, Cam Robinson, is terrible. He's 30, and he's a free agent. Their left guard, Bitonio, is nowhere near as elite as he used to be, but he's serviceable. He's 34. He's a free agent. Ethan Posick is 30 and a half years old. He's bad, and he's a free agent. Wyatt Teller is 31. He's bad, and he's a free agent. His backup, Tevin Jenkins, is a free agent. Their right tackle, Jack Conklin, is 31. He's bad, and he's a free agent. We legitimately need 5 new offensive linemen. I mean, look, we'll probably have to pay Bitonio. Ideally, I don't know. Somebody's got to play offensive line. But we got to swing at whatever offensive lineman we have available to us. And the best one available right now is interior offensive lineman Chase Besantis. So, again, if it's up to me, I don't know, maybe we let Bitonio walk and we keep Wyatt Teller. One of them's got to stay. My preference would be Bitonio stays just because he's a little better, but he is older. Either way, we also need an interior offensive lineman. So Chase Besantis is the pick, the interior offensive lineman out of, I believe it was A&M. I forgot to look. All right, next up we have the Kansas City Chiefs. They took safety Caleb Downs in the first round. And I'll tell you what, one thing that the Chiefs are very good at, the Patriots used to do this all the time, is allow the talent to come to them. There's a lot of things that we could do here. We could do offensive line. We could do wide receiver. I think finding a premier player to help would be nice. But Rashee Rice is, playing as long as, assuming he's going to be on the field, playing some pretty good football. Xavier Worthy, similarly, playing some good football. Kelsey is decent, assuming he comes back. The guy that I said was at the top is still there, and that is edge rusher TJ Parker. They have Karlaftis off the edge. They don't have a lot else. Omenahu is a free agent, and he's not that good anyways. Why not just take the top prospect that has fallen to you? I think that's what they're going to do. So TJ Parker, edge rusher out of Clemson, is going to go to the Kansas City Chiefs. Cincinnati Bengals, oh boy, do I feel bad for this team. Got one of the best pass rushers, one of the best quarterbacks, probably the best wide receiver duo in all of football. Why aren't they doing more? Because outside of that, they have nothing. Outside of that, their offensive line is bad. Tight end, I guess, is okay. Their number 3 wide receiver is bad. Their defense outside of Hendrickson is it's just bad. And their linebackers are appallingly bad. They need defensive tackle help. And unfortunately for them, the offensive line situation has just been absolutely picked clean. We could go all the way down to Caleb Tiernan out of Northwestern if we were so desperate. Top available prospects right now, Emmanuel McNeil Warren, safety out of Toledo. R. Mason Thomas, edge rusher. By the way, there has been a lot of talk, I don't know if I put it in my notes anywhere, I'll have to try to find it and add it in here, that Hendrickson is not coming back. It's just not going to happen. That would leave them with, Shamar Stewart, who they drafted last year, Miles Murphy. They don't have a lot that's great. I think the frustrating thing is both of those guys are recent first-round picks, which is the only thing kind of keeping me away from making that decision. Even if they're not great, we've done the work to replace them, and that's just the way that it is now, I think. And so I think, there's a couple good options here. Lee Hunter, the defensive tackle out of Texas Tech, is certainly an option. We don't have a lot of great players, but we've got guys, and they're relatively young that can kind of play. Again, we got first-round guys off the edge. Offensive line is just not good value right now. Finding a third receiver is probably not a priority. I think what we're going to do is we're going to take the top available prospect, and that's Emmanuel McNeil Warren, the safety out of Toledo. We have Jordan Battle, who is okay at safety. But Geno Stone is currently a free agent right now. He's not playing very good football. Whether we resign him, I don't know. But either way, we probably need to find a replacement for him. And I know it's Toledo, but, I mean, the PFF grades are off the charts. Coverage grades from 70 to 80 to 92. 1 touchdown, 2 interceptions, 5 pass breakups, just 116 yards given up with an 83 run defense grade, 6'2", 202. The only thing I wonder about is if there's I don't know much about their schematics, but I feel like he might be more strong safety, which I think Battle is, but I'm not going to get that far into the weeds as of right now. And I'm going to have them take, again, the safety, Emmanuel Warren. That brings up the New Orleans Saints, who decided to do the flashy thing, which is always going to end up being kind of stupid. Taking a running back when you're not a good team at pick 8. But, I mean, I'm the one that made the pick, so I guess I can only make fun of myself. New Orleans Saints, obviously, I mean, a lot of this is going to ride on Tyler Shaw. It's kind of a more interesting storyline than it probably it should be more talked about. Tyler Shaw was not terrible, and he's a second-round pick. I think the biggest thing I'd worry about is the offensive line, but again, the options are just really not there right now. Offensive line help is not great. I mean, it becomes great between like 100 and 200. There's a lot of options. Right now, mid-first to through the second round, nothing. So, I mean, we got Chris Olave, Devon Vele. It looks like a good, solid pick. We got ourselves a new running back, which is great. So I guess, we're kind of looking at what's available to us. And so I think, even though I would like to work on the offense, it's just not great at this time. So what makes probably the most sense, I'm tempted by R. Mason Thomas, the edge rusher out of Oklahoma, because, they have Chase Young, who's playing pretty well. At just 26, going on 27 years old, getting somebody on the opposite side wouldn't be terrible. But I think the bigger need here that lines up with the value would be defensive tackle. Brian Brzee is a first-round pick. That was a massive, massive flop. Horrific football player. He's in the final year of his deal. Bullard, Williams, and Ridgeway are all free agents. The remaining 3 defensive tackles are in the final years of their contract. Shepard is 33, Godshaw is 32, and Brzee is bad at football. We don't have a lot of good options at defensive tackle. And so we're going to look at Lee Hunter, 6'4", 330-pound defensive tackle. As I said, lot of big boy defensive tackles. Probably isn't going to give you a ton. But you still need to shore up the interior a little bit, especially if you're trying to be a team that can look. A lot of the successful teams are teams that can rush 4. And if you're going to rush 4, it's not just about getting to the quarterback. You got to be able to stop the run with 4. If you can't do that, they're going to run it down your throat until you bring extra guys up, et cetera, et cetera. So, he actually grades out okay as a pass rusher, even though the stats aren't there, but he is primarily a run defender, and that's how we're going to use him. Next up, we have the Miami Dolphins. They took Mansour Delane, cornerback, at pick 11. Jeff Hafley is their new guy out there. Another team you got to consider quarterback. I probably won't. It's not a great value. I don't know what's going to happen with Tua, and also there's a ton of speculation that Malik Willis is going to end up being their quarterback, so I'll probably just leave it alone. Another team that I would love to get offensive line help for, but they have really tentatively amazing wide receiver situation. I don't know what's going on with Tyreek Hill. I don't know if Tyreek Hill knows what's going on with Tyreek Hill. But Achane and Waddle are phenomenal. Waller's a decent enough tight end, even at 33 years old. I think, Hafley's probably going to be looking for some help with this defense in general. We went out and got a corner. But I mean, it's first of all, they don't have, I don't think, anybody on this defensive line that is really very good. Bradley Chubb ranked 103rd out of 119. You've got Chop Robinson, who had an okay rookie year, ranked 100th out of 119. And then you've got 2 defensive tackles that also are not grading out very well. On top of a handful of guys, mostly backups, but about 4 different guys that are free agents along that defensive line. So why not take the top guy available when it's a big need for you anyways, and that is R. Mason Thompson, edge rusher out of Oklahoma. He's a little bit of a lighter guy at 6'2", 249, but he is a pass rush demon. Had a 90 pass rush grade. The year prior was an 87 pass rush grade. Had 15 sacks over the last 2 years, including with last year being, looked like he missed some time, about 5 games. And he obviously has had some experience with a guy like Micah Parsons, so I feel like he could use him in a similar role as that a little bit smaller but quick, twitchy pass rush type. Next up, we got the New York Jets back on the clock. They've already made several picks. We got Arvell Reese at 2, Ty Simpson 16, and then Prenyon, the offensive lineman. It's another team where it's hard to go wrong in any real direction. At this point, we filled some pretty serious needs to the point where I don't know if I really want to reach much more. Zachariah Branch is at the top. Also, Chris Johnson, the corner, which I think is definitely something to take into consideration because it's also a need. Safety Dylan Thieneman, I think also could be a serious consideration. I know defensive tackle is a popular option, although I don't necessarily, number one, agree. And also it's just not as big of an option at this point. And so I think in the spirit of continuing to try to build around our new quarterback, we are going to go with Zachariah Branch, wide receiver out of Georgia. I think it's a good complement to what you get with Garrett Wilson to get that speedy, twitchy slot guy. So with our 4th pick already, some teams without 1 so far, we're taking Zachariah Branch, wide receiver out of Georgia. Baltimore Ravens now back on the clock. They took wide receiver Jordan Tyson at 14. Just looking at their what they have available to them, again, offensive line not really an option right now. We added a wide receiver already. Tight end also not really an option, so I'm probably looking again at defense. That is, as I said, kind of the strength right now. I think corner is absolutely an option. Marlon Humphrey has been a good corner, mostly in name only. He had a horrific year last year and is going to be 30 years old. So I don't know that he's necessarily the future of the franchise. Nate Wiggins, who was a first-round pick, took a step back this past year. Awuzie is a free agent. So, Chris Johnson at corner is absolutely in consideration. I think edge has to be something to consider. Kyle Van Noy as well as David Ajabo are free agents, with Van Noy being 35 years old. Mike Green was a guy that they took in the 2nd round. He was awful this past year. Tavius Robinson, their 4th round pick, is also really, really bad. So that, to me, is sort of a dire situation. I think interior is also in consideration just because of how many free agents there are. I don't exactly know how many are planning to come back, but it's 30-year-old Taven Bryan, 35-year-old Brent Urban, and then 29-year-old Draymond Jones. So how many of those guys do you really want to bring back? But based on the way the board is sitting right now, I think edge makes the most sense. And so we'll stick with the top of the board. Another relatively smaller guy, but that seems to fit with what, at least what they've been doing with Mike Green and whatnot. Also a little bit of a smaller guy, but Romello Height out of Texas Tech, 6'3", 240 pounds. He's been grading, he had a 93 pass rush grade, 62 pressures and 9 sacks at Texas Tech. Spent a lot of time with a lot of different teams. He's going to be a little bit older, but really broke out this past year. So, Romello Height to the Baltimore Ravens. Then we got Tampa Bay. Tampa took edge rusher Keldrick Falk in the 1st round. Tampa's another team that needs just kind of a lot of help. Another team that I would love to grab some offensive line for. It's not out of the realm of possibility. It just seems early, especially for interior guys. There's a lot of talk that Mike Evans is going to be out the door. I forgot exactly, was it the Jets or somebody was, or New England maybe, is going to be going after him pretty hard. Chris Godwin also is 30 years old now, so outside of Emeka Ibuka, wide receiver is a consideration. Tight end, if there were any available, would be an option. I think the biggest thing to consider, Jamel Dean, apparently, I'm surprised to hear this. Nothing is set in stone, but apparently is unlikely to come back. He is 29, but he is a phenomenal cornerback. And without him, this cornerback group really goes downhill pretty fast. He is propping this thing up quite a bit. And we got three corners actually sitting in the next 5 picks. So corner makes a lot of sense. A lot of that would hinge on whether or not Jamel Dean, not that we couldn't look for a number 2 plus an eventual Dean replacement at almost 30 years old now. Otherwise, there's safety, which I wouldn't think is as big of a need for them. There's Jake Galday, the linebacker, which I think is something that seriously needs to be considered. Although, obviously, the positional value is not quite as important. So I'm actually going to go ahead and do that. I was going to try to find the corner that is most fits the profile of Jamel Dean, but none of them do. So I'll just go with the top guy here, and that's Chris Johnson, cornerback out of San Diego State. It's a guy that was good for 3 years, 70, 70, 70 in coverage, and then just had a massive breakout this past year with a 92 coverage grade, a 16 passer rating when targeted. He allowed just 185 yards, 0 touchdowns, 4 interceptions, 5 pass breakups. I don't think I've ever seen anything like that. That's remarkable. Next up, we have the Indianapolis Colts. This is their first pick, so you got to make it count. Had a very impressive run, and also an impressive collapse at the end of the year, but an impressive run to start things off. There is a question at quarterback. Daniel Jones and Phillip Rivers both are free agents. I think the assumption right now is that Daniel Jones will return. So we've got that. We've got a highly competent offensive line here, although Braden Smith has not had the best last couple years and is pushing 30. But still one of the better offensive lines out there, as long as we're not super worried about age. Quentin Nelson, also 30 years old in the final year of his deal. I know there was some talk about Alec Pierce possibly moving on, but we still have Josh Downs and Michael Pittman that are playing pretty good football. Jonathan Taylor's good. I think we have to look defense. We went out and got Sauce Gardner. That was a huge pickup for us. We got Charvarius Ward, who played really good football, although he's getting a little bit up in age. But I really think they hit a home run with Laiatu Latu at the 15th pick. He's looking like a really solid edge guy. But first of all, if you look at the interior, DeForest Buckner's 32 years old. He's in the final year of his deal. Grover Stewart, 33, in the final year of his deal. Neville Gallimore, Chris Wormley, and Eric Johnson are all free agents. So there's no long-term options here pending some of these guys getting re-signed, but none of them are, or 28 is the youngest. Then we got Kwity Paye, who's a free agent off the edge, unlikely to come back. Samson Ebukam, who's 31 and a free agent. They just don't have anything outside of Laiatu Latu, who they drafted. So defensive line has got to be their biggest need. Defensive tackle, really not an option, but there's a bunch of edge guys here. And Zion Young seems to, going off of Latu, kind of fit the mold of a little bit more what they're looking for. 6'5", 262, 2 years at Michigan State, 2 at Missouri. His 2 years at Missouri kind of broke out. He went from the 50s as a pass rusher to his first year at Missouri to a 72, where he had a little over a 10% pressure rate and 3 sacks. And then his big breakout year 2 of Missouri, year 4 in college, 83 pass rush, 87 run defense, 57 pressures on 326 attempts, and 8 sacks. So big, stout, run defending, pass rushing, edge rusher. Just kind of an all-around guy. I think it's a solid fit with Latu on the other side. We're still going to have to do something at defensive tackle, but makes the most sense for where we're at. Next up, we got the Falcons. Also have not made a pick yet. they've also got quite a bit to figure out. They drafted James Pierce in the first round last year. That didn't work, and also he may be going to prison for kind of a long time, so that's not really an option. They drafted Leonard Floyd a long time ago. I mean, they've taken swings at edge for a long time. It's a never-ending thing. They've got Jalen Walker off the edge. I don't know that they've ever fixed that issue. In addition, the interior still not very good. Onyemata is a free agent. And then I just think they have guys that are, to my knowledge, not very good. Jalen Walker, roughly depending on, who, Ebiketie, if he gets re-signed or whatever. They got Leonard Floyd, who's there at 34 as a free agent. They have 5 different free agents off the edge. Pretty much their entire edge room is going to be a free agent. So I don't know who's getting signed, who's not. And again, Pierce is one of the guys, along with Walker, that is not a free agent. And again, he will presumably not be back this year or for a long time. I don't know. Could also look at wide receiver. I think outside of Drake London, they don't have very much. Kyle Pitts is a free agent. He's getting signed. There's no way they're going to let him walk. It's going to be probably a lot of money. Got to do what you got to do. So, I mean, I'm a corner, I think, is also a serious consideration. So corner, wide receiver, and anywhere on the defensive line would make the most sense. I mean, corner is not good, but we've at least got bodies that are going to be around for a while. And I think, like, Hughes is kind of up and down. He occasionally can play. A.J. Terrell, he's had some good years. Maybe you just get some better coaching in there and you can kind of get that fixed up. Wide receiver is the one where I feel like we just don't have a lot of answers. Darnell Mooney's got 1 year left at 29. He'll be 30 when his deal is up. David Sills in the slot is 31. There just isn't much here. There is a guy, Chris Bell, at wide receiver. There's a note here that he was considered a late day 2 pick entering the season, but he played so well he's in consideration for a potential first-round pick. The biggest issue, though, is that he tore his ACL, which might kind of screw this up, which puts him right back in the middle of the second-round conversation. I do wonder, though, because he's a similar prospect at 6'2", 220. You'd have just two, not that there's anything wrong with it, but just these two big monsters on the outside. I tell you what, though, I think, I know Mooney's a pretty big guy, too, so probably doesn't matter, but I'm going to pick a different, there's 3 receivers kind of right in this range. I'm going to go with the number 3 on this list, and that's Jeremy Bernard out of Alabama. I think, first of all, he's a very different kind of player, but in addition, with Kevin Stefanski taking over, you're looking for a guy that has some utility, a little bit more versatility, and Bernard can be that guy. He can be that chess piece. He's the guy you can move around outside, inside. You can do some creative stuff with. So you got your big boy on the outside. That's cool. Everybody loves that. I got to give Stefanski his versatile weapon, and so I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to make that move. All right, let's take our final break here, and then we'll rip through the last of them. We got a bunch of NFC North coming up here with the Vikings, Lions, Panthers, and Packers as our next 4 picks. We'll take a break. We'll be right back. So with the Minnesota Vikings up, I have to at least ask the question, is it possible we look at Trinidad? I think the answer is no. I think we're not going to panic and reach for this. We know we got a little bit of work to do. We probably got, we don't have a new GM, but, all the more reason not to go crazy and get a quarterback when you don't have a GM yet. I think we just got to work on a little bit of maintenance and trying to chug this thing along for another year, and we'll see about possibly looking at quarterback next year, I think. Or McCarthy could be great this year. You never know. Who knows? Our last pick, we went out and got a corner. We picked Avion Terrell at pick 18. And I tell you what, I got a relatively easy pick here. There's a guy that's been hanging at the top for the last several picks. We are going to be losing Harrison Smith, and we could use a safety. And the top guy here is a safety, Dylan Thieneman out of Oregon. Absolutely dominant safety all 3 years that he was in college, but especially his 1 year at Oregon. 91 grades, 76 run defense, 87 tackling, 81 pass rush, 91 coverage grade. Just an absolute beast, and provides us a second DB piece for our defense and for our very talented defensive coordinator. The offense is probably going to be lagging. I don't think we're competing for a Super Bowl this year, but we're laying the groundwork to build ourselves a powerhouse again when we get a better opportunity to kind of build this out. Really what we need is a quarterback. We get that, we'll be okay. Too bad the one that just won a Super Bowl is gone. We could have a different conversation, but, such is life. For the Lions, I think it's a relatively straightforward pick here, mostly just because of how the board is set up. Would love to get Hutchinson some help on the other side, but there's been a little bit of a run on edge rushers. Interior continues to be an area where I would be happy to get some help, especially with, DJ Reader is 32 and a free agent, Roy Lopez, 29, free agent, all that kind of stuff. Definitely need to address, edge and defensive line. However, there's a lot of free agents for Detroit. The way the board is, I think corner is going to be the direction we go. We brought in DJ Reed. It was a decent acquisition. He got hurt and he's 30. So I don't know that this is a long-term thing. Terrion Arnold was a very early pick. That was a terrible pick. He's a first-round pick. It was a terrible pick. He's not good at all. It's been 2 years. We've had time to look at him. And then we got Amik Robertson, Rock Ya-Sin, Avonte Maddox, Arthur Mollett, and Jalen Mills, all free agent. Basically, every other corner is a free agent right now, with the exception of Ennis Rakestraw. We need corners. We don't have a single, unless we like Rakestraw, we don't have a single corner that is worth anything in terms of our future. So we're going to grab the top available corner, and that is Keith Abney, cornerback out of Arizona State. Again, not a lot of real big, beefy corners. He's coming in unofficially at 6 foot 190, but had a really good breakout year in 2025. Only played 2 years. His first year was his second year, very, very good. 86, 78 run defense, like 90 tackling, 85 coverage. Really, really good year. Again, they need a lot of stuff, especially on defense. Corner is one of them, and that's just where the board seems to be falling. Next up, we have the Carolina Panthers, who took Kenyon Sadiq, tight end, at pick 19. So now that we have Sadiq, I kind of like our offense. It really just depends on, again, the free agent situation. We got to bring Cade Mays back. He wasn't great, but it's something to kind of solidify this thing. Aquanu is solid. Taylor Moton is solid. I just think the main priority right now is going to be defense. Off the edge, we took Nick Scorton and Human Malin last year. Neither of them looked particularly elite. Maybe we're a little excited about Nick Scorton. But I tell you what, I'm iffy on these edge rushers. I know it really shouldn't matter all that much, but Overton, very big guy that doesn't really excel. He seems fine in everything, but not great in anything. And then Joshua Joseph's edge rusher out of Tennessee is one of those smaller elite pass rusher guys that you don't know if that's going to transfer in the next year. Plus, there's already injury issues on a 240-pound guy. I think you could at least make the argument that the bigger deficiency is going to come in at linebacker, and there is a really solid linebacker out of Cincinnati in Jake Galday. 6'4", 240, solid in just about everything, especially this past year. 90 run defense, 78 coverage, 83 tackling. It's not as elite as getting an edge rusher. I will admit that. We can hope for growth from our second-year guys in Scorton and Human Malin, as well as whoever else is going to be held over. And obviously Derek Brown is going to be the main force on our interior or on our defensive front, period. I think if we can get sort of that field general in the middle of the defense, that could really help us out kind of across the board here. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. I'm going to take Jake Galday, linebacker out of Cincinnati. And that brings us to the Green Bay Packers. So we got D'Angelo Pons is a big one. I think he's probably over-mocked to the Packers, but there's also the people who want to sound smart who say that the Packers would never draft Pons, which is just not true. It's unlikely because he's small, but it's the same reason a lot of people would probably not want to draft him, yet somebody will, and the Packers are in that camp of it's possible. Right now, if you look at the way things are lined up, it's not great. You got wide receiver, Pons, wide receiver, safety, edge, quarterback, tackle, wide receiver, tackle. I mean, you got to go down here to get to Connor Lew, which I'll be honest is not the worst option in the world. He's a little bit further down. You would hate for your first pick in the entire draft to be a center, especially a guy that's got injury issues and there's not, again, you've as I've said before, you got 1 year of data on this guy where he played well, and then the next year he comes in, he didn't play as well, then he gets hurt. But the projection was this guy's going to be a top whatever. The other thing I don't like about that, as of 2024, he came into this, he's going to be an automatic first rounder, and then he gets hurt. And it's like, well, he would have been if it wasn't for getting hurt. Do you know how many guys right now are like third, fourth round picks that we were talking about were going to be elite? Cade Klubnik. Imagine if Cade Klubnik tore his ACL halfway through that first game. We'd be talking about how, he's a lock first round pick, but he's going to slide a little bit because of that. Okay, but there was stuff that happened that changed the projection that we just didn't get a chance to see. We don't know that if he had played a full season, we'd still be talking about him as a lock first round pick. So, I mean, it's cool to be able to say, hey, this is our opportunity to get a first round pick that fell because of whatever. But it almost reminds me of like Savone Revel, who was this like elite athlete that was, he played for a small school and he's got injury stuff. And then he ended up falling into the third, and then he was terrible. He's like this elite first-round talent, the kind of guy that you just don't pass on. He ends up falling further than people thought, and then he plays, and he's just not good. I mean, it's an option. I feel weird as a first pick taking Connor Lew. Then we got Malik Muhammad. He also makes me nervous. He's sub 190. He also has gotten worse every single year and has only played seemingly one full year. He had an 80 grade in 2023. That went down to a 72, which was his first full year. And then he played less than 600 snaps in 2025 and had a sub 70 grade, with his production tanking after week 8. His coverage grades were 60, 50, 60, 60, 40. So the entire second half of that year was quite bad. There's Jadarian Price, which would be super interesting, the Notre Dame running back. There's several edge options if we're going to say Rashawn Gary's gone. Otherwise, we could drop all the way to Dominique Orange, but I'm just not a fan of Orange. Not because I've watched him, his grade. He has a 60 grade as a run defender. Who wants that from a 330-pound guy with no pass rush ability? I feel like the most Packers pick, the one that makes the absolute most sense, the one where after it happens, you go, we knew that was going to happen, is LT Overton, the edge rusher out of Alabama. He's like the fifth one down on the list. It's a premium position, which Gutey wants to take. He's just 21 years old, so he's extremely young. He didn't have his best year in 2025, but 2024 was sort of his put him on the map year with a 78 pass rush grade, 82 overall, 82 run defense. So he did both very well, even though his sack numbers are very low. He's like Rashawn Gary if he was a second-round pick. 278 pounds, which I feel like the Packers are maybe trying to get a little bit away from, but with Micah, maybe you can focus a little more on run defense while you let Micah kind of handle a lot of the other stuff. Find you a big 280-pound edge setter. I don't know, but and his PFF grades are not great, which seems like Gutey always is a contrarian with PFF, where you look at it like Josh Myers or something. Not that it ever pans out, but you look at it and you're like, that guy, really? It's not my favorite pick, but there's no picks I like. And this one just feels like, yeah, that's what Gutey would do. He's a 21-year-old edge rusher that broke out in 24 and then regressed in 25, like Jaden Reed and everybody else on our freaking team. So there you go, LT Overton. All right, now we're going to do the thing. Been kind of waiting on this a little bit, and it just kind of fell this way. Pittsburgh Steelers, their first pick. They got Aaron Rodgers their help with Mekhi Lemon. Yay, we did it. Guess what we're doing next? We're doing the thing. Trinidad Chambliss is a really exciting prospect, really interesting prospect, and you need to set yourself up a little bit for the future. I know you probably just go all in on this year, whatever. Don't squander an opportunity to get a prospect that is a toolsy guy that you can spend some time growing, especially with a very talented quarterback, minded head coach, and sitting behind a guy like Aaron Rodgers. Jordan Love had that opportunity. In fact, Aaron Rodgers had that opportunity. He had Mike McCarthy and Brett Favre to learn from. We got another quarterback coach in Matt LaFleur and paired Jordan with Matt LaFleur and Love, Rodgers, the other one. This is your opportunity, and you probably only have the 1 year to do it, but you get Mike McCarthy and Aaron Rodgers for a year with Trinidad sitting on the bench. It just is what it is, man. Now, you could argue for a different quarterback. That would be fine if you wanted to go Nussmeier or something. Maybe a guy that kind of, I am kind of a Klubnik fan. I'm seeing a lot of other people are not. I really like Klubnik. Aller's got some redeeming qualities, but he doesn't really have any legs, which maybe that works now with the way Rodgers is. He doesn't really have much legs either, but just looking at more of a Rodgers style. But whatever. We're going Trinidad Chambliss. And I'm in it for the drama, man. Round 1, Rodgers finally got his guy. Round 2, Rodgers is slamming the whiskey. He's pissed. All right, next up, we got the Philadelphia Eagles at pick 54. They took wide receiver Denzel Boston in the first round. A lot of talk about A.J. Brown being out the door. Don't know if that's real or not, but sounding like that's potentially a thing. As far as the top available guys, I mean, we do have a tight end that's kind of lingering. He's a little bit further down, but it's something to consider with the talk that Dallas Goedert is also probably out the door. And our other two tight ends, you got 28-year-old Grant Calcaterra, who is a free agent, and 28-year-old Kylan Granson, who is also a free agent. So our top 3 tight ends are all free agents, with our top guy likely out the door. I think is worth considering. Surprisingly, despite the investment off edge, I think you could argue that there's an opportunity here, partially because, we're going to have to pay some people, and it's going to be a lot of money. Nolan Smith is coming up for a contract. He's probably going to get paid this year. He's in his final year at 25. And then you got Uche, Ojulari, Brandon Graham, Jalen Phillips, and Okoronkwo, all free agents, all 5 of them. So you could make an argument for the fact that we're going to need to start continuing pushing in that direction, even though it's not about we have bad players. It's just about if we want to continue being good there, we're going to have to look at that. I think the biggest one, though, if we're looking at actual deficiencies as well as free agency, as well as the board, there's one that kind of makes the most sense to me. Now, obviously, there's a guy that was a rookie this past year. He only played about a half a year. Maybe he's going to take a step. I don't know. In Andrew Makuba. But Reed Blankenship really did not play well. He's looking like a stud, but he got worse every year. His grades have been 79, 73, 69, and then 42 this past year. He is starting to fall off. And then again, Makuba, they drafted in the second round, and he didn't have a very good year. Blankenship also is a free agent. So I don't know if he's coming back or not. Mark Epps is a free agent. I think safety might be our biggest need here, and safety is also relatively high on this board. At least we got one guy. So I'm actually going to go in that direction. I'm going to have the Eagles selecting A.J. Halsey, safety out of LSU. Next up, we have the LA Chargers, who picked Vega Ione in the first round. Ioane, however you say the guy's name, I don't know. The offensive line is absolutely horrific. Mekhi Becton is probably gone. That's probably the direction we're going. We have tackles, but the interior is just so bad. Zion Johnson, the first-round pick, a guy that was, expected to be some kind of a freak. He's been terrible. Bradley Bozeman on the interior has been terrible. Grabbing another interior guy should not be out of the question at all. I mean, you look at what we have. I mean, I don't know what's going on with, Khalil Mack is probably gone off the edge. Owe is also a free agent. I would assume you bring him back. I think, well, first of all, we have Caleb Tiernan out of Northwestern. So Tiernan, World, and Ahenachor, however you say his name, are all listed as tackles. I think Tiernan, there is some talk about being possibly a guard swing tackle kind of a guy. But there's also Connor Lew. And I think I'm just going to do it. I mean, you look at the Chargers. We got Herbert. We got guys. We have to be able to make something work here with this situation. I mean, if you want to grab a wide receiver because McConkey wasn't quite what he was and Keenan's 100 years old and Quentin Johnson hasn't really panned out, fine. But I got to protect the quarterback. So I'm going to have them taking Connor Lew right here. Jacksonville Jaguars are on the clock. They are. This is their first pick. And I think this one also is relatively straightforward. I mean, you could definitely go in a couple different directions, but the first thing that stood out to me was wide receiver. The problem is we've invested a lot in that position. We took Brian Thomas in 2024. We took Travis Hunter with the second pick. We cannot go another wide receiver. Those guys just have to step it up. You could argue that they could use a guard, but the rest of their offensive line is quite solid. The area that stands out probably the most is the defensive tackle. I don't know that they have great defensive tackle options now, but as I've said, everybody wants to win with 4. When you got some guys off the edge like Josh Allen that can tee off, sometimes you just need guys inside that can take on some double teams and help with that. And so I'm going to have them taking Dominique Orange, the defensive tackle, out of Iowa State. Yes, Packer fans, I know. What about us? You could have done that for us. I get it, but I didn't. So it is what it is. Then we get the Chicago Bears, the final NFC North team. Chicago Bears drafted Caden McDonald at pick 25 in the first round. Defense obviously being the biggest deficiency for them. The Bears are in a bit of a safety crisis. Everybody is a free agent. Jaquan Brisker is a free agent. Elijah Hicks is a free agent. Kevin Byard is a free agent. Jonathan Owens is a free agent. Chauncey Gardner-Johnson is a free agent. The only guy that they probably, I would assume, would keep is Jaquan Brisker, who's 27. Byard is 33. Chauncey Johnson is 29. Jonathan Owens is 31. I mean, they could keep whoever they want, but there's definitely a question about the safeties and their future. Edge is another one that's a big, big question mark in terms of just who the heck do you even have? Montez Sweat is the one guy. He's 30. Then what? A whole lot of nothing. So safety, you got to figure some stuff out. I guess, sign a couple guys back and maybe in the later rounds you look at that. I think edge is too much of a catastrophe to not address. So we're going to look at that Joshua Josephs, edge rusher out of Tennessee. Again, a little bit smaller, speedier, twitchier guy. Be able to complement Montez Sweat, at least for as long as he ends up sticking around. Sweat, it looks like contract goes to about 2028. I don't know how much of that contract is real, but Bears have him under contract for the foreseeable future if they decide to keep him. Then we have the San Francisco 49ers, who took Cassius Howell, edge rusher, at pick 27. This one also is relatively easy. 3 of the top 5 prospects are wide receiver, which is maybe one of if not the biggest needs. They got several that you could argue, but wide receiver is certainly one of them. Looks like Brandon Ayuk is bye-bye for the 49ers. Deebo Samuel obviously is not there anymore. A lot of guys are either gone or potentially leaving. Juwan Jennings, he's a free agent. Sky Moore is a free agent. Kendrick Bourne is a free agent, with Jennings and Bourne being either at or around 30 years old. So wide receiver is starting to become depleted there's more going out than coming in. And Chris Bell is sitting here as our top receiving option. And since they need a little bit of everything, I'm not going to overly stress about which one of these 3 to go for. So I'll just take the top available option and send Chris Bell, wide receiver out of Louisville, to the San Francisco 49ers. Next up, we have the Texans, who have made 2 selections so far. Caleb Lomu, the tackle, and Kristen Miller, the defensive tackle. And I tell you what, I know exactly what I'm going to do here. This one feels good. So, again, we've added some help in some different areas. They have a very good defense, and we added to that a little bit. We tried to help out a little bit with the offensive line. I think adding another weapon, especially one like this, could be a lot of fun, and that is Jadarian Price, the running back out of Notre Dame. This guy is a super talented, violent running back. To be able to complement Stroud and these receivers with a slightly improved offensive line and an elite defense, to add a run game, a violent run game, to a violent defense is always a fun pairing. So I'm going to have Jadarian Price, running back out of Notre Dame, going to the Houston Texans. The Buffalo Bills in the first round selected linebacker C.J. Allen. This is another team that's been very much in the market for wide receivers. There's a lot of speculation they're going to be active in free agency as far as wide receiver is concerned. I don't have any of that information now. All I have is a depleted wide receiver room and a team that desperately needs a wide receiver. So I will also have them. Oh man, it's still 3 of 5 or 4 of 6. It's a lot of wide receivers now. We'll be taking the top receiver in Elijah Surratt, wide receiver out of Indiana. Another super talented big wide receiver going to the Buffalo Bills. That brings us to the LA Rams. The Rams so far have already made 2 picks. Jermod McCoy, the cornerback, at pick 13, and then Monroe Freeling at pick 29, the offensive tackle. And I'll tell you what, the Rams are a good team. They don't have a ton of massive needs. They got a solid offensive line the one deficiency we added to. Corner, they need help. It wouldn't be the worst thing in the world to add another if we so chose, which is certainly, I might rethink that. I might do that. No, I'm going to stick with my first instinct on this. We can re-sign a couple corners as well as we already drafted one. It may seem surprising at first glance, but outside of Puka, they don't have a lot of great options, with the exception of Devontae. And Devontae obviously is getting up there. He's 34 years old. So I don't know, Puka's doing a lot of the heavy lifting in the future here. And whoever the quarterback is after Matt Stafford, I'm sure would appreciate a little bit extra help. In the meantime, you got Stafford, Puka, Devontae, and another receiver. Good luck stopping that trio. So it kind of works on both of those levels, short-term and long-term. So again, I'll just take the top guy here, and that is Malachi Fields, wide receiver out of Notre Dame. All right, Denver Broncos. I'm not sure the board is wonderful for us right now, but I think the answer is relatively obvious, and it's not my favorite thing in the world to do because we took a linebacker in the first round, and so positional value is not going to be great. But at the same time, I think we're a team that has a lot going for us, and if we have holes, we got to fix it. And so with that, we've got another hole, and we want to add some talent here. We're going to go with tight end Max Clare out of Ohio State. That brings us to the New England Patriots, and I got to be honest, watching that football game, I couldn't help but feel like maybe offensive line should be considered. I know they were up against a premier team. There's no question about that. But still, how much better does your team perform if that is the case? There's also, so as I look at this, you look at it and say, okay, interior offensive line is the bigger need for sure. There's, I think, a question, though, whether Will Campbell should slot inside to guard. I have no idea where New England Patriots fans are on that issue, but I know that's been a talking point that Campbell has been miscast as a left tackle. He should slot inside, meaning we would need to go out and find a left tackle. And so I'm going to actually play with that scenario a little bit. And I think what I'm going to do, again, there's discussions about who can play outside, who's going to, it's such an sometimes stupid discussion, but Tiernan, who's the next highest out of Northwestern, there is talk about he may need to be inside, and it would be kind of stupid if we made a mistake taking a guy that should be guard and moving him to tackle and then doing that same thing again. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to skip him and go to the next guy where there is no doubt, and that is 6'8", 318-pound Isaiah World. He's been almost exclusively a left tackle. Played last year at Oregon, and we will plan on moving him to left tackle, which is going to solve kind of two issues. It's going to improve our left tackle spot, hopefully, as well as maybe moving Campbell into guard and shockingly improve the left guard situation away from Jared Wilson, who was a third round pick last year. Maybe he can grow. I don't know, but he was terrible and he needs to not be playing. We still got to figure out what to do about the Garrett Bradbury situation, but I think this pick improves two spots quickly. And finally, Super Bowl champion Seattle Seahawks. They don't have any needs. No, I'm just kidding. I'll tell you what. There's one that jumps out at me immediately. It's so weird to say this on a defense that's so dominant, but there was one guy that I saw repeatedly that there was a lot of eye rolling. Like, of course, it was that guy giving up, something or whatever. As well as he's a free agent and he's 28 and he's just not very good. We've got some really talented pieces. Why not get another one? So in place of the 5'11", 190-pound Josh Job, I always call him Joby. Apparently that's wrong. I don't know. Why don't we go out and get the guy that has fallen to the back of the second round, D'Angelo Pons, cornerback out of Indiana. As a number 3, assuming you got Emmanuel in the slot, that's a heck of a thing. And it's not going to be that high of a bar to clear to be better than Mr. Job. So, although I think interior offensive lineman is probably something to consider, I think Gray Zabel was massively overrated. But, God forbid you talk interior, because that would disgrace the holy name of Gray Zabel, who everybody is all excited about. Anthony Bradford, I think, is terrible on the interior. But we'll give him a break from the offensive line talk for a little bit, which is a nonstop discussion. And we'll end up taking D'Angelo Pons, cornerback out of Indiana. Okie dokie. That is going to do it for us. That is officially a 2-round mock draft when you combine the two. So give me your thoughts if you got them. 608-561-3243. Call in, let me know. Otherwise, you guys have a good rest of your day. I'll talk to you later. Bye-bye.